things that you were supposed to look at. And you didn't print these out, but we're going to do this kind of work on Friday, and that's why I want to show you, because they have the example that you're supposed to fill in while you were on there and come up with an assignment, and then you go to the next one down, and the next one says possible. It could have been an answer. Then it has an example, another example, one more example. Read through those again before Friday, because we're going to do this. We're going to do the lesson standard. We're going to put a writing into there. You're going to be in groups based on some content, and I may have like 4 people that are math people doing geometry, but I might have a PE and an art person in that group. And you guys will have some input. Then you will actually physically create something. You'll give it what you think it is on the rubric. Then you'll share it with another group. You won't have names on it. They'll be a little bit more truthful to what you created, and then we'll share out. Okay, so it'll be on computers, the work we do on Friday. We're going to hit, absolutely going to be on standards.org. We're going to look at what you have for content. We're going to hit TRL, which is Teacher Resource Thing on SLDS, and we're going to hit Georgia Virtual School. All right. Beyond that, I would like to know where people are creating their curriculum from, because really extending past that is not necessary, to the point of some people maybe in art, digital design have to go to some different place to get their curriculum. But for the most part, that's where we should be starting and agreeing upon that, because that's what the state says we've got to teach. And we'll look at your, what do we want them to know? We're going to look at when do we need them to know it by, you know, when are we teaching it, looking at the curriculum maps. And then we're going to look at the assignments, that you're going to create those. And that's the first part of that lesson plan that we're all heading towards. This stuff we should be seeing every day in every classroom. Every day in every classroom. So when it's on your evaluation by this point, and I'm talking about I didn't see it up there, you know, that is becoming part of that, because the expectation is we are doing this now. The expectation is that we are breaking down the verbs and the assignments. And then as we start looking at assignments, I'd like people to start getting ready to take a look at an assignment that you're giving, take a look at tests, compare tests to the standards and see where you're at, have those discussions with your groups, and we'll do some of that on Friday. But read over those, because you're going to see some interesting, and I'll ask you to bring assessments. I did ask you already. When you bring your curriculum, if it's in a notebook already, good. If you keep it online, don't print it out again. Don't make a book out of it. I mean, we'll go back and forth on your computer in the cafeteria.
Do we need to bring Chromebooks?
No, I'll bring them. I have one. She's setting them all up for us. Okay? So we'll have Chromebooks there so you can access it and all that. Now, what I'd like you to do too is you were supposed to create an action plan for what you're going to do and share it with somebody, but we're going to do that on Friday, because we're going to combine that piece with Friday. But what I'd like you to do today is on your sheet, we talked a lot, or I talked a lot about things that we're looking at within this unit, on the review of the unit. But on the back of this paper that you've already put your name on and filled out, you're going to do something called the 3 C's. With what you put on your windshield reflection activity, how you felt, please clarify for us, you know, what was confirmed by your problem. I'm still, you know, muddy on this. I confirmed that I didn't know that or whatever. What was clarified in your understandings, and what was caused you to think a little bit more about what you're doing? Was anything in what was done today brought up? So take a few minutes. That's your exit ticket. When you're done with that, I'll have 2 piles. Your big stuff and then that paper. And please sign in. Walker's on there twice too. Is Miss Thomas out? Anybody know if Miss Thomas is out sick for
She's out today,
She has something? I know Weaver's out.
Holly's out.
Yeah, Matt was out. Anybody heard from Judge since the day began? Heard about him this morning, but I mean, he's still there. But anybody hear anything since then?
What he sent just that short
What?
email.
Who did?
A little short email, did everybody get to
I
it?
saw it.
The judge,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I didn't
The
get that.
last one,
That's what they
The one yesterday afternoon?
no.
I didn't get one today. But then again, I haven't been on my emails.
Fergus this morning, and he said he called him,
Yeah.
that he went to Tipton, but then we didn't get to finish our conversation.
He went to Tipton, and they did more tests, found fluid on his lungs and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then he finally got him into a room, I guess last night, but it was late because they didn't have any rooms ready and they were full up.
It says to CHS, he said I'm not dead yet, I'm still kicking.
Yeah, that was yesterday. Right?
I didn't get that. I didn't get that.
That's all, I got it today at 11:50. It says to Julie in CHS, like,
Yeah. I got that one yesterday. I think he was sitting around the emergency room doped up and calm. But, so, he was all right by that point. But we haven't heard since then. Fridays, 8 to 3:30. You'll have an hour lunch break, and but the rest of the time will be in the cafe. At this level, we're teaching below that line. And that's why they're not meeting the standards. In theory, apathy could be the basic part of that, but teaching below that instruction, teaching below that grade level, is a big part of why the instruction of the success is not there. Because we're teaching down here. Not on purpose, not because we don't know what we're doing, but because of things like apathy. Because of things like, okay, well, if I don't teach it down there, they're not going to pass my class, so the graduation drops. Yes, there's a million reasons of all of that. But paradigm shifting, if we all taught at this level, this group right here, this group that's under the line or above the line, if we're at least teaching to this level, we'll have a chance to improve. That's why we're seeing our scores, we're having multiple people at threes that are going to get threes whether we, and don't get mad at me, but it's the truth. There are kids getting threes that are going to get a 3 whether we teach them or not, because they got you guys as parents. The truth is they're going to get their 3s. Our goal is, if we're going to push them, we're going to 4. But if you have to teach down here all the time, they're not going to be pushed. Those 2s, if you're teaching down here, are just going to stay where they're at because they don't have a chance to get to that line because they never see the line. So that poor teacher that I upset today, when I'm saying they're reading at a 650, she taught a beautiful lesson. It was an A+ quality lesson. And I'm telling you, it was an A+ quality lesson. It was hot. It was good. But then she started reading to them, and the book they were doing, it was like, talk about theme or plot or something. But the book she was reading to them was at a 650 Lexile in a 9th grade class. So she's reading to them at that level, where at that point the 650 Lexile might have been something okay when you start differentiating. You let the kid write about theme using his 650 or your 750. But what about the rest of the kids that should have been taught here or higher, having to read at this level in the classroom? Does that make sense? It doesn't mean she's a bad teacher. It just means there was one component of the whole process that was off. The other one was Shakespeare. 2 classes, 9th grade and 10th grade, and I got into an argument with the teachers today. 2 teachers were teaching Shakespeare. Now, one of the EQs was, how do we better understand Shakespearean plays? Well, that's not in any of the standards. How do we better understand Shakespeare? It is not in a single standard. There are standards that say things like, compare and contrast 2 works of the same author. If that was what was on the board and they were supposed to learn and they understood that, what do you think they're learning? They're learning how to compare and contrast 2 works of the same author. So you might do Romeo and Juliet and you might do Hamlet. But if I'm seeing Romeo and Juliet being done in 9th grade how do you better interpret a Shakespeare? And then in 10th grade, how do you establish theme using Romeo and Juliet? Where is the change in what they're learning? Because they're not, and neither one had communicated what it was that the kids were supposed to learn. So they're not able to differentiate. They're thinking they're just doing Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet again. So that is that whole gap that we're talking about. Were they bad teachers? Heck no, they're some of our best teachers. They're some of our best teachers doing this. But just because of what we've always taught, and I guess my theme is teach the right stuff. You're trying to teach the right stuff, and then put it in alignment. Why do we have multiple syllabus for the same subject here? I'm still not getting that part yet. We'll fix that. But that's that collaborative communication part that we're working too hard on our own. So when we talk about assignments, the assessments need to be the same too. Because a brand new teacher may not know what we're talking about, and it's going to start doing assessments over here. And again, lowering that standard, where everybody should be teaching at the same one, at a higher level. Yes, it's rigor, but you all know the truth. A child spends 5 days in your class, the first 5 days, trying to figure out what the minimum requirement is to make you happy with them. In other words, what is required of you to get the grade they need, what is required of you so they can do the minimum amount of work to make you happy. That's what they spend the first 5 days doing. And it's research proven that they will do the minimum, and I don't think anybody going to argue the fact that they try to do the minimum they can. That's what teenagers do. So if your minimum becomes higher, they'll meet that minimum. Will there be kids down here? Heck yeah. But it's the same kids that are going to be down here if your standard was low. If your standard was low, they're going to be here. If your standard is high, at least you'll bring some with you. The ones that are going to be low are going to stay low. That's that apathy part. But we keep lowering it for them. And they still fail. So, you know, you got to draw the line of where you want to be. And that assessment and that assignment is like, look, I am going to put my foot down a little bit at a time. It's going to take a little bit to get them to move up. But we talk about things, this over here, this drawing is physical science. Bill Durrance, Bill's in this class, so I'll use you as an example, so now you're here, so I'm sorry. Bill Durrance and I analyzed this data, and to me it was eye-opening, and I shared it with Rusty today. There are two, and you probably all don't know this, but physical science is offered in the middle school now for high school credit. So they're giving our 8th graders, your children, physical science tests. Okay? And your kids are doing really good, but here's the problem. They're in 8th grade taking a class with a teacher who's not a high school teacher right now. And probably a nice person. I don't know who the teachers are. There were 2 teachers actually. One teacher did much better than the other. Much better. All right? So all those kids performed no 4s, and they were all in the 2 to 3 range. Now we're talking about children that should be a 3 with or without you. With or without you, they should be a 3. But they didn't have the vocabulary at that level, okay? Because they didn't have that age-appropriate content level to that point. So the vocabulary is what twisted them up. So then they go to 9th grade, now they got bio, but they got Mr. Durrance now. So Mr. Durrance hits them up with this whole thing, and he takes every one of those 2s and 3s, and they're all 3s and 4s now in bio. A kid you all know is if he's a 2, he's going to stay a 2 or 3. But there was such a big gap with that group because of how it was taught and what was taught. Had Durrance or Kelly or Debbie, or Kelly Taylor, Debbie Kelly, if any of them had those kids for 9th grade and taught them the vocabulary that goes with it, they would have performed at 3 and 4 at the end of the exam, physical science exam, because they'd have had that year of maturity and that right there. And then they would have been all 4s for Bill. He wouldn't have had to make up that year. Am I saying it right or not?
Sounds right.
Sounds right, but you saw the numbers, and we're not making them up, and I'm not asking you to brag on it, but it's the truth.
Taking a 10th grade test.
They're taking a 10th grade test, and they don't have the vocabulary that goes with that, which is why they're reading, they're writing, they're teaching, and letting them hear that content is so important. But if the 8th graders are doing down here, they're not getting to that, and we're expecting them to actually be a year advanced, and they're not getting it. So that's not the way to do things, and that's what this is happening here. And that's where it shows. It's here, it'll pick up a little bit, but we're losing a lot. So that's killing us on points and schedule.
But are they mature enough that I teach ABAC, and a bunch of my kids are like in 10th grade, and they're taking algebra 2 class. I'm like, how do you take algebra 2 in 10th grade? So we took algebra or whatever in the 8th grade, and I'm saying, well, we're going to run out of math classes in high school. What are you going to take when you get to be a senior? Or I'm not planning on taking the class.
No, they're going to take it all off campus.
Right.
And then we're going to offer a campus, and if Ms. Howard teaches it, she's used to teaching high school kids, and she gets them through it. But then all of a sudden, we go out and we say, okay, we're going to offer econ, dual enrollment. The guy comes in and says, I'm going to teach at college level. Guess what happens to our kids?
They can't do it.
They can't do it. And not because of your teaching, but this has been all the way through. And what do? Instead of sucking up and dealing with it,
They drop out.
they bail. And their parents start calling and complaining about it. And I mean unmerciful. Talking teachers and administrators' kids. So what do you want? Do you want the rigor? Or do you want to just say your kid's on the rowing team and take a picture on a boat and get into the college at USC? Okay? I mean,
Isn't that the scale that's going on right now?
Well, I mean, that's what we have to question.
that's what's happening.
She just got arrested.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You got people doing that.
It happened this year. And I'm telling you right now, I had 4 children get a C in a college level course. And their parents wanted to kill me. A C on a college level course, taught at a college,
At college level, now they're prepared for college. We had to ask ourselves the same thing with my son in 6th grade. He was in honors math. He had a B. So do I let him go back to regular math so he gets an A, or do I challenge him and keep him in the
What
class?
truly do you want? If it's about the A,
It's about him. It's
Or
not
is it
about
about
him
the-
learning, and so he
Exactly.
stayed in there. And this year he's got an A in math.
so at elementary school, do we continue to put up everybody's work on the wall? Or do we tell them, if it's good, it goes on the wall, and if it's not, try harder next time?
But in that problem, we have parents that, well, my child is all, I mean, I hear it sometimes from my parents that, well, my child has always been an A student, and I said, well, maybe they are no longer an A student. Maybe they finally met a challenge in math class.
Maybe they're good at math and not at English language arts and not an honors kid all the way through. So that's stuff that it's not our poor kids, our bad kids. It's our really strong kids too. This is a college level course that was taught at the guy loved he's more passionate than I am about a lot of things. The guy was good. But I had to keep calling him and say, dude, you got to tell me when they got a C. And he looks at me like I got 2 heads on.
Because you don't do that in college.
We don't talk to parents. We don't do it. But these are my kids. They're yelling at me. You got to help me out. I got to get them to Laura Howard and get them some help or something.
Yeah.
But the problem was, it don't matter. You have them sign off on it. So that is a problem. But I also believe those same kids should have been able, because I know them, had they been given the rigor all along,
But their parents didn't want them to make that.
they wanted the A was more important than the quality of the content.
Well, see, the thing is, it's like now, if you're valedictorian, if you graduate valedictorian or salutatorian, you automatically get that Zell Miller Hope scholarship. So parents are pushing their kids, trying to get them up.
Yeah. Have the parents looked at the graduation rates for vowels and sows
Right,
in
Yeah.
college?
right.
It's the middle ones that are actually doing better.
The vowels and sows are dropping out at a higher rate than anybody.
Well, but that's always the thing, because it's only the kids that are at the top are the ones that don't do things that you need to stay there. They don't study because they get it
Right.
in class.
It comes
They
in
don't
easy.
take notes, and so when they finally get challenged, they fail.
There's a difference between elite and elitism.
Right.
And we have to start separating that elite versus elitism. We're caught in elitism mentality. I want, if you're elite and you can do the work, I want to give the praise. But I don't want to say, hey, thanks for showing up and give you a trophy.
Right.
You know?
This is a change of subject, but something I thought.
Please release track at this time.
Make them run.
Please release the track team at this time.
When I was reading this, what I really liked was if they can complete the assignment, if they've not been in your class, then it's not rigorous. I thought that was pretty good. Like, if you're doing an assignment, they have
To a point.
to be in your class. If they can miss the lecture and still do the assignment, it's not rigorous.
Correct. So, and I've had that conversation recently with a person in this room. Okay? And it's because we have some kids that can do the assignment with us or without us. I think that's sometimes going to happen. Just like I got kids that couldn't do anything if I did the work for them. You have outliers. We start thinking of those outliers. The majority cannot miss 45 days and still pass your class. There are kids that are going to do it, and I don't know the answer. But maybe you would want to analyze your test and say, how rigorous was my test compared to the standards? And if it was a real test, and I don't mean to say a real test, but one that was truly aligned with the standards, how would they have fared by not being in my class? If they could still fare well, those are those kids that are they're there anyways. So I'm only saying that because I had the conversation with a person in this room specifically about a kid's attendance who passes everything, shows up and does everything they're supposed to do. Great kid, you know, all that jazz, but I don't know. I would love to see the test that kid takes and maybe take an analysis of expectation versus what we're asking them. You know, if that rigor went up, could they do it or not? I don't know. They can do what we're asking right now, but could they if we up the rigor? I don't know. Be a good question. The black hole. This is that black hole. I mean, look. Even if this is this, you know, it's going to close. We can make it all 12th grade. Well, yeah, graduation rate's going to drop. A lot of things are going to happen, so it's got to be. You've got to find the happy medium there. Lexile versus motivation. That was that conversation we had about that. The teacher asked a great question. What about, you know, motivation to read versus the Lexile number in my class? Well, they don't like to read. They don't like to read, but and you want to motivate them for fun books and how to read. But when you're instructing, you still want to instruct on grade level and use additional time or activities to work on, hey, I found this great book for you, you'd love to read it, more on their Lexile, and maybe give them assignments on that separate. Most students are not instructed to the level. I don't think anybody would argue that, because I think my conversations with teachers all the time is, but they can't. You know, we've had to dummy it down because of graduation and everything. So we know we're not teaching at level. I think all of us in here could probably say, if we really look at our standards, we're not teaching at level. We're trying to get there, but there's a bunch of other things that get in the way. Great conversation on that. Too much information. Those standards are like this. I've got to teach it all. Well, you don't have to teach it all. We're going to do a lot of that on Friday. We're going to take a look and start looking at, you know, what are the key learnings they have to have. You cannot cover that curriculum in 1 year. So we've got to start narrowing down where do we get the biggest bang for our buck and take it off your plate. I bring up that elementary school, the 40 lesson. There's, in first grade, I think they got a list of 20 words they're supposed to know. And that's like by the state set curriculum sets 20 words you're supposed to know. This one school had all their first grade teachers doing 40 words. So that was their rigor. We're going to make them all do 40 words. Well, the problem was they couldn't spend the time they needed to on all 40 words. And they weren't getting the 20 words either because they were just so spread thin. Do the 20 words right, correctly, deep, and you might have some kids that you could do a few more words or work on root words, but at least guarantee the 20 words. And that's what we want you guys to be able to do, is take things off your plate, guarantee something. Yeah, they might not get this, but you know, it's not going to be all anything that we have to worry about right now. So that you can do the stuff good. Building blocks, keep blaming the middle schoolers. Yeah, it is a lot their fault, because they're in the same boat we are. They get in the 8th graders, they blame elementary. You know, if those 6th grade teachers had done what they wanted, I'd be doing a lot better in 7th grade. What wasn't the 6th grade? It was 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, all the grades through. And then it was the K5, the 0 birth to 5 years, where the kid got nothing. And is already 5 years behind. You know, that whole story is very true about the parents in your children's kindergarten class. Your child walked into kindergarten with a better vocabulary than many of the parents of his classmates or her classmates. And they're talking about, and they said how many words it was, and I apologize for not remembering how many words higher that your kindergartner has over the parents of some of his kindergarten peers. So that's what you're not dealing with apples and apples. Trend instruction. Oh, that was Becky gave me that one. That's very good. Students falling backwards, the PS, and then the vertical and the horizontal planning. They say, oh, we don't have enough vertical and horizontal planning. Well, heck, I'm talking horizontal planning. Horizontal planning tells me my teachers that teach biology have the same syllabus. Right now, we're not at that point. I'm just using biology as an example. I don't know if it's the same or not. But there are many syllabi out there that are not the same. How are we ever going to get to the vertical part, 8th grade and 9th grade, if we can't even agree on grade level? So we got to get to that point. We're still good. The assignments, the writing part. There was a lot about writing. Tell me what you put here. Okay, I got to go above it. This one here, I like this assignment. How well, everybody got this one perfect, right?
No. Not the first time.
Did anybody, honest to God, did anybody get it perfect the first time?
No.
You did?
Yes.
All right, Laura, you're going to lead this conversation because I missed all kinds of them on this one.
I don't remember how I did, but I did.
Right. Well, we're going to do it as a group. We'll do it as a group. Let's talk about it. There's all these types of writing. Let me go back to social studies. I want to thank the social studies department this morning. We got talking about this writing. And this writing freaks a lot of people out. Now we got to write. So my math teacher, one of my math teachers gave me a great thought, and then one of my social studies teachers. And the social studies teacher said, look, instead of trying to write 2 paragraphs or saying, give me 2 paragraphs on this, or setting a limit on it, give me something quality. And start asking for smaller, shorter, more precise, less volume, but more content rich. So when they're asking these questions, the social studies teacher said, I'm not asking as much from them in the writing when it comes to how long and the content, but what they write, I want it to be very specific and to the point. and they're getting more out of it. So that was very helpful. And then the math teacher said, look, I'm just trying to tell my teachers, or my kids, that it's a formula. You know, when you write for math, I don't know if it's an exponential, I don't know if it's an narrative, I don't know what it is. It's not what I do. But when you write, give me 3 points, tell me what, you know, why it's right, why it's not right, talk about the 3 ways it's not right, and then bring it all together again. And just follow the steps of the formula, you know. That old 5-paragraph, Philip, how long ago did that go out, the 5-paragraph deal? Been a while, right? But it's still, to me, a worthy way for non-writers to remember how to write.
Yeah, it's an option.
It's a what?
It's an option.
It's an option.
Yeah, there are many ways to write, what I guess the intended purpose is. And
Right, but the intended purpose.
And for some people, that's the thing that will work best.
Right. So you find what works best. But if I was taught that way, that's the only way in writing I know how to teach, because I wasn't taught multiple ways to write. So with that said, a comparison essay, is it informative, narrative, or argumentative? A comparison essay, first one I missed. So what do you think it is, and tell me why, and then we'll try to talk about it. Argument. Who said argument? All right, and we know Lord got them all right. It's an argument. But why is it an argument, a comparison essay? I'm just comparing these 2 computers, and I'm telling you, I'm writing an essay why these 2 computers.
You have to prove whether they are similar or not, so you have to have evidence on both sides.
It's still an opinion type of thing, and is why they're saying that a comparison essay still involves somebody's side of the story. It's your opinion on why they're different. So I'm going to put argumentative for now. Editorial. Editorial. I can only think of newspaper editorials. And when they write into the editors, what I think of.
Wouldn't that be a narrative?
But you're also accepting an opinion. That's why I thought it was argumentative.
It's one side of the story, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. It's one side. So it'd be like you reading something like a narrative. Because, I mean, they don't know.
Huh?
I said, I think I skipped that one.
Came back to it. Some people skipped some, and then they came back with what was left. I think an editorial, I'm just going to put it up there. We won't put it up there yet because I'm not positive, but I think it's argumentative. And the reason it's editorial is argumentative, it's one-sided. I can argue with it. So let me go to speech. Because that's the other one people want to skip. Is speech argumentative, informative, or narrative?
It's argumentative.
And the only thing I can remember is before graduation, I have to read everybody's speeches. Why do I have to read their speeches?
Slanted towards their own personal opinion.
Slanted, it's an opinion, it's going to be their version. And for content, don't get me wrong, I still read it for the cussing and swearing. But appropriateness. It's argumentative of what they think is okay. They may not all be. And I just think the president, when Trump got up with all his speeches, narrative. And I could look around the room and, you know, the one side will say, yes, they were. And the other side will say, heck, no, the guy, you know. It's argumentative depending on what color your glasses are on that day. So they kept skipping that one. But I am going to put argumentative because the speech, by the way, is argument. I didn't realize that, but it is. I got that one wrong too. Book review. Informative, it tells me what's in the book. Siskel and Ebert were informative.
If you're doing a review, you're doing like your opinion on it, right?
What's an art review? Let's just use an art review.
It's your
Okay,
it's how it makes you
you're
feel.
right, that's argument.
It's all I can think of.
You're right.
I don't know if I'm right. I'm telling you right now, I think. A reader's theater script, that was easy for me. A reader's theater script.
Okay, a book review, not a book blurb, a book review.
Correct.
Gotcha.
It's the review that makes it. I'm telling you my opinion of the book. A movie review, an art critic review.
It's not like a synopsis.
Yep. A reader's theater script.
That's narrative. That's narrative.
Tells a story, right? I had to look this, I didn't even know what a travel log was. I guess people when they travel, write down what their trip was like and take pictures and put it in that thing. So travel log.
Narrative.
Narrative. Tells a story. All right. Lab report.
Informative.
It's just step by step what occurred. A newsletter article. The Cook High School newsletter. It tells us dates and times. A bio poem. I had to look that one up too. There's poems that people have about themselves. But it could have been written by somebody else, but it's a biography of the poem. Narrative tells the story of the person. I didn't get it right, I'm asking. And then that makes the editorial informative explanatory. We're not going to get the greens right now, you know that, right? And when I click that button, it's not all going to be green. We're wrong.
I don't think an editorial is informative, but I think we need to switch comparison and editorial.
You want to switch comparison.
Essay and editorial. 'Cause I
And
don't
let me
think
tell you why
editorial
she's
is
saying that. I'm supposed to, in a comparison, tell you this to this. They're
Right.
black, 15-inch, Dell, one's number 5, one's number 6. That's a comparison. I'm really not putting an opinion in there, I guess, in some cases.
You're just telling the facts about it.
Right. There you go.
Right by it, 3 points.
More like that?
Anybody else need one?
Anybody else? All right. That beautiful drawing is a windshield. All right. And in that windshield, what I'd like you to put is your response in there. The response is to the following. What type of windshield reflects your understanding of planning quality assignments? That's the first part. Your 3 choices are glass, which means you have a totally clear understanding. Mud, I can barely see understanding. Or a little fuzzy. You'll put that in there. And then you'll provide the reason for your choice. Make sure you provide the reason for your choice. Make sure you put your name on this one, because I'll collect this with the second assignment on the back of this one as well. So please go ahead and fill that out now. We'll do 3 minutes, and this is on your own. Two more minutes.
I'd have been here sooner, but our kids were so excited about meeting our new student. You know, he looks like a girl.
We're recording too, by the way.
Okay.
I've met him.
Yep. I mean, it looks at
2019.
2019. Only 2019.
Huh? All right, let's take a look at this. So what I've asked you to do is kind of talk about your current understanding. And then as we go through the day, hopefully we'll clarify some things. Hopefully you already, if you already know all of it, that's good. You'll be able to help teach the rest of us. Or if there's some things that need clarifying, we can ask those questions as we go through it. What this assignment is and what it means. Make sure your name is on that, because we are going to collect those afterwards, and you'll do a follow-up dealing with those assignments. Let's go to the escape on this one, and go to this. So, tell me a little bit about when you had your project here, what did you put in here? What comes to mind when you think about assessment? We'll just kind of go around the room. Just this time you can talk out loud. Just what comes to mind when you think of assessment?
I put formal versus informal.
Formal and informal.
It was balanced.
Balanced. Formal, informal, balanced.
Formative and summative.
Say?
Formative and summative.
Formative, summative.
But is it rigorous and fair?
Rigorous, fair.
Standards-based.
Standards-based.
I guess when we're talking about summative assignments, are the questions clear and concise, or are they ambiguous?
Okay, so the question quality.
Question.
Good. All right. So everybody's got down, when they think of assessment, all of those things. What about measure mastery? Anybody put down it measures mastery?
Did students successfully get what they were supposed to know and be able to do?
Mastery. Did it say guides teaching? Or did anybody put that one down? Guides teaching and learning. I think that's one of the big ones we're going to see as we go through here, is it's supposed to drive it, which brought us to the conversation in other groups. And this is not saying we're good, bad, or not good teachers, because we don't know the difference, many of us. But there is two types of assessments in my book. There's formative assessment, and there is summative. I'm going to just go like that. I don't have to write assessment. Summative. All right? Let's go ahead and define the difference between formative and assessment as far as formative assessment and summative assessment as far as we're concerned as a group. Because it's important to know the difference between the two. Formative assessment. Let's start with that. What is formative assessment?
Like you do anything like just walking around asking kids questions?
It can be anything. It can be anything, okay? What else? Formative.
It's assessment for instruction.
Assessment for instruction. Now, you highlighted the word for. That means there must be, you put emphasis upon for. You probably have another emphasis word for summative. What would that be then?
Well, that's assessment of.
Assessment of instruction, or yeah, of instruction, right? Good. All right, we're going to talk about the difference, but can you tell me what you think the difference is for the class?
Well, informative can be anything along the way, just visually assessing what you just said. You see the looks on their faces. It can be a shout out, raising the hands. It can be a to get out the door. It can be anything. It doesn't even have to be graded, but it's just letting you know, guiding your instruction. What are you supposed to do? Where are you supposed to go? Whereas the summative is at the end, or, did they get where they were supposed to go?
And then what do you do? What's the, this one is guides the instruction. Did they get the instruction?
Well, then you may have to remediate if necessary, or you may have to remediate some if necessary and accelerate some, and that's where that differentiation, I guess, would come
Where
in.
differentiation comes in. That's the separation between differentiation and actual instruction.
Right. That's
Okay.
where the data.
All right, so let's kind of talk about that because they brought up what the key points for me are. If I were to ask the question, it's a three-part question. Part one, can formative assessment be summative assessment? Part two, can summative assessment be formative assessment? And then part three, why? Can formative be a summative? Can summative be a formative? And why? Think about it. All right. Give me something. Tell me at Cook High School, can a formative assessment be a summative assessment? You guess it could be. Why do you guess it could be?
Well, the way I distinguish between formative and summative, really, it's like when you're going to take a grade, test their skills, and put that down as an indication of what they have learned. I really don't do that often with formative assessment because those are little nuggets instead of the big whole thing. But you can use that to determine whether the students actually learn that particular skill that you want them to learn.
Okay, so what you've said is that a formative could be a summative because you're measuring something, you're giving a grade on it, right? To see if they got the whole thing, but it's just a small chunk of what you're heading towards. Okay, good.
It also
Add to that.
Says formative could be anything, so I guess by definition it could be something. It could be anything.
It can be anything. It can be how they look. So it's not going to be a grade sometimes.
Right.
All right? Well, let's go the other way with the summative. Can it be a formative? What is a summative? If we say it is, did they get it? It's the end of instruction. Give me an example of a formative test. That's a big one around here.
Say a unit test.
A unit test. What's the biggest one we have? EOC. Let's start with an EOC. What do we do with the kids after they've taken an EOC to improve their instruction on that?
Usually it's old.
We give the grade, or they pass the class, or they didn't, but it does not drive our instruction. We don't change the way we deal with those kids about that content. It's like the football game. You get out there, you practice all week to go up against Berrien. You take Berrien's offense, you work our defense, work our defense, work our offense to plan for Berrien. Get in the game, and we assess how we're doing along the way. We get in the game, there's a final score, that's a summative, the game's over. We're not going to fix the Berrien problem. Now we got to move on to the next problem. You got to worry about Tifton. Okay? So that's a summative, it's an end score. The formative is all along the way. We change our instruction for those kids based on the formative part. So the formative can be a summative. You can give a grade. It could be a add-all, but the end-all doesn't change our instruction. Those end exams, a unit test, if you did a unit on the Civil War, and now you're heading into World War II, that's the end of it. That's a summative. You're going into World War II now. Vocabulary quiz might be a formative that you give a grade on. You tested these 20 words, but those 20 words are going to be improved upon or used all through the unit. So that might be a formative assessment as you add more words to it and you revisit them. Okay? That's important to know because the assignment and the assessment words start getting a little unclear. So we want to look at formative. Formatives all along the way. If we're going to start going to these 2, 3, 4, or 5-day units, we've got to have multiple assignments in there that measure mastery. Not wait for the unit test at the end, because then it's too late. Okay? Then you have to start interventions and remediations here. Then it becomes differentiation. So good. The next page was the little page about, you don't have it by page, I have it by page, I'm sorry. I shouldn't use the word next page. But then we got into that whole why and all that, and we got into classroom assessment. What are the types of assessments? Now, is that going to go away if I do this or not? Alright, so we got different types of, this is kind of a, if this was on the FCAT or the EOC, that'd be a great test because they make this sound, they villainize this objective test. They make it look like it's the bad thing, and then they make this with all the words make it look like a good thing, so all the good stuff should be over here, and if it's a bad thing, it goes over there. We all know that that's not true. You have to have objective tests. It can be a formative. You really don't want it to be your overall summative because it just it's true falses, completion, matching. A lot of times you're just measuring your memory, all low order. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time remembering, but this was real simple. They just took everything that they think is bad and put it over here. And it's not bad because you have to do those sometimes. And then it's saying that authentic assessment is one in which you give an assignment. And it's a bigger project that measures all of it. Okay? And an assignment is an assessment. You measure it, but it has to do with the assignment gets away from check boxes and yes or no's and true and false into actually doing a product. What you practice is what you learn. So, those are the types of classroom assessments. And I'm sorry, it goes so slow, but it's just what it is. I'm sure it's the same in your rooms. Which type of classroom assessment would be best for assessing will, know, learning goals, and which type would be best for measuring will be able to? I mean, and that's real simple. The will, knows are the objective type of tests. What's it going to do if I do that?
Just go back.
And then the authentic assessments are your will be able to. I mean, that's not something you all have to spend a lot of time thinking of. It got into asking why. Why do we do assignments? And you had that little box, and you were named 3 of them. So go to that little, it was yellow, and it was one of your printouts, and it looked like this. It says why, in yellow. Graphic organizer, was that? What did you put for your whys? What was the first one? Why do we do, what does it say? Why Use the information you just learned to add to the why part of the graphic organizer. Your graphic organizer. Why do we use lesson assignment?
Communicate to students knowledge and skills they need to learn.
Communicate to the students the specific knowledge and skills they are intended to learn. All right? Bless you. What was the second one?
Advanced student learning as they complete the assignment.
It's thinking about it, but if you wrote down advanced student learning as they complete the assignment, you got it right. I mean, this, like I said, the assignments weren't hard. I just want to make sure you got them all written down. It advances student learning as they complete the assignment. And then it's going to get to the assignment gap. But what was the third one? Let's do the third one, and then I'll go back up to the gap. What was the third one that you should have written in that box?
Provide evidence of learning to both the students and the teacher.
Provide evidence of learning to both the students and the teacher. I think a lot of people think assessments and tests provide evidence to the teacher, and we forget that the student needs to have that evidence of their learning too. As a matter of fact, I was just going to cite somebody brought me 2 students. My teacher's blaming me for cheating, and I didn't cheat. I think it's you, Paul. Was it? No, it wasn't you. It wasn't you, never mind. Philip, not Paul. So I said, well, I'll make a decision, no problem. You know darn well the teacher's not going to accuse them of cheating unless they got good reason. So bring me your papers, show me. They brought me both papers, and it's so evident they cheated that you don't have to be a writing expert to see it. All right? But the teacher showed them why, but if he highlighted all that sentences, it would have been, even though it's not learning anymore, it would have shown them why. So it says cheating 0. All right? Highlight. The learning opportunity there is to highlight the where they cheated and show them where they did it. So that's all I did. So I was the teacher on that. I know it's just a silly example, but the teacher definitely was right, 100%, they cheated. But had they just taken a few minutes to say, this is why you cheated, all right, that makes a difference on the student learning. I know that's not a perfect example, but that is learning, okay? So don't just say I did it, tell me why I did it. And going back to that learning gap, this was very interesting, and people don't believe me on this one. This is where they start taking things personal. Because of the word assignment, I think, is why. We think we do assignments, we do activities. We're relating activities as assignments, things we do as an assignment. Your homework is an assignment. What you do in class, that worksheet, that's an assignment. Well, it's not always an assignment. The assignment is that measurement of what you have them do to see if they're doing that work that you want them to do and if it's on grade level. And you see the national average on this. As grade level increases, assignments given to students fall further and further behind grade level students. So we're saying that at the 12th grade, they should be up here. They're performing at about a 9.78 grade level instead of at the 12th grade when it comes to assessment. So no, that's everybody else. So please remember, I'm only talking about everybody else, not you. All right? So your assessments are on level and on grade, I'm sure. But your partner in crime in that room next door to you doesn't have it. They're teaching at a lower level. And if you want to see it, you take one of your assessments, one of your assignments, and you start looking at the verbs and what you ask them to do and compare it to the actual standard in the questions. And are you asking them to do what it's asking you to do? Do you think it's the same or is it the same? And what happens is the achievement gap starts blowing up when people start saying, well, it's the 8th grade fault because they didn't get it. So I have to spend time redoing 8th grade content. Or they can't read. And this is where people start getting mad at me. I made a teacher cry today. I didn't want to make her cry. It wasn't my intention. I made a couple teachers cry today. Let me rephrase that. It's been a bad day for me. There was a teacher who had an excellent lesson. It was a fabulous lesson. I started off saying that. It was a great lesson. Now, again, the best of lessons can be better if we want to improve. Or they can stay where they're at and say, well, I'm going to outlast you anyways, McFee, so you can't teach me anything. It was a great lesson. The teacher got all 3s and 4s. But I made a comment to the person that the book they were reading to the children was at a 650 Lexile. This is a 9th grade class. How are they going to get 9th grade vocabulary, 9th grade content if you don't read to them at their level? They should have got that in 8th grade or 7th grade. I get that. They should have, would have, could have. But I hired you to teach on grade level. Teach on grade level. One of our teachers came up with a great thing today. Is it the chicken or the egg? You know the whole thing we're going to do, and we're going to get into the lead article. And they said, is it the chicken or the egg? What came first? Lower expectations or low The CCRPI scores, or something like that. I forgot how it went, but it was, did we lower the expectations and that lowered the CCRPI scores, or were the CCRPI scores so low that we lowered expectations? And are we lowering expectations? Have they always been lower? What's happening? Why are they saying it's supposed to be here, but we're way down here on assignments? Well, again, don't tell me to work harder. Don't tell me to work smarter. I'm working as hard as I can. I'm working as smart as I can. We're doing everything we can. Why is it still not working? Well, because we're not teaching the right stuff. And we're teaching too much of it. And we're not narrowing that focus down with a little bit of research and numbers. That's all it is. And that's what this stuff's about. So when you start looking at this assessment, if you want to know where your thing is, you and I can sit down with one of your tests, take the standard and your learning goal, and compare them with that test, that assessment, what you're asking them to do. Is it take 30 minutes of coloring in a class to do the assignment? So 5 minutes to gather the content and 30 minutes to do the coloring part of it. And y'all know I'm telling the truth here. There's a lot of coloring to make it look pretty. So you got 45 minutes to do the assignment, but 30 minutes of it is all it took to color, and 15 to do the work. Well, what are we doing here? You know, where is that balance of the rigor? What can we eliminate, and what can we do as the assignment to make it more on grade level and more rigorous in its extent? Yes, it's fun to color, and boy, it gives me a few minutes to back off, I get it. But we have to start thinking, if you want the numbers to improve, there's some things that have to be taken off the table, and other things put on the table. So there's been some great discussion about that, but let's discuss this right here. In your own thoughts and in your own mind, you were supposed to do a lead article. And here's what it said. On one of your assignments, you were supposed to, I want to read it directly to you. And you should have printed, this one you probably would have printed out or wrote it on the back of something. Here it is. It's called What is in the Lead? You are a newspaper reporter assigned to investigate the assignment gap and report what it is and why it happens. What will be the lead sentence in your article? So not the bio tag or the intro tag or the thing. It's what is the lead sentence in your article, and write your sentence on the back of your graphic organizer. So if you're trying to remember where it is, it's on the back of that why, how, and when. So go ahead and give me what you wrote, please. All right? We'll start off. Anybody, don't be shy.
Assignment gaps, I'm sorry. Assignment gaps are widening as students progress through school. Why?
Okay, assignment gaps are widening. Why? All right? Somebody else.
But teachers are often frustrated with poor test results in their classes, but could the current downward trend be due to lowered expectations rather than student apathy?
Good. So lower expectations because of student apathy.
No, I said or, rather than.
Rather than.
Student. I said, but could the current downward trend be due to lowered expectations rather than student apathy?
Okay. And trend could be because of lower expectations rather than apathy. So more us than the kid.
Right.
And again, we say stuff like that and people take it personal, and that's not the goal here. It's not personal. We're doing the best what we know.
Please release the soccer players at this time. Please release the soccer players at this time. Thank you.
Because you know what? Apathy's not going away. It exists. Okay? So that's got to be a part of it. But what part of it's the teacher instruction part that we can actually fix to make it better? That was very good. Thank you. Anybody? I won't back off. I got to keep going. I want to hear more. You're shy.
Teacher expectations?
Teacher expectations. I got that up there, and I'll hit that one. Good. More?
You can control the quality of education your students receive.
You can control the quality of the education they receive. Look, and I'm going to bring it up. This is my drawing that Miss Sawyer didn't like my drawing because she says everybody can draw, and I'm sorry, but everybody can. I cannot draw. But look, here's the level of instruction that I hired you to teach at in its simplest form. All right? Some of you got to teach at 3 different levels. In its simplest form, I hired you to teach a subject on a grade level. Okay? That's at the grade level expectation. Currently, when we start saying we dumb it down, is that we're teaching it down